everyone, my name is Avery Simmons. I'm a senior at MVRHS, and I am here today to interview the Board of Health Committee members about COVID. Megan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yep, sure. Hi, my name is Megan Lancaster. I'm the health agent for the town of Oak Bluffs.
I'm Marina Lent, and I work for the Board of Health of the town of Chilmar.
My name is Matt Poole. I'm the Edgartown Board of Health agent.
Mara Valley, the Tisbury Board of Health agent.
Omar Johnson, health agent for the town of West Tisbury.
What is the real info we should understand about the numbers of cases we see on Martha's Vineyard?
The real info that we need to understand is that, first of all, we may not be seeing all cases on Martha's Vineyard. Second of all, it's unpredictable. Case numbers are unpredictable, and even those of us who really studied hard about diseases found ourselves being surprised and unable to predict case numbers on Martha's Vineyard. I think one of our biggest surprises was how few cases we had over the summer, and then in the fall it came and whacked us across the face with many more cases. Part of this is the way COVID spreads. It does not spread reliably in that every single person will infect one other person or something like that. You can have these either people or events where very many people can get infected and suddenly you're pitched up to a different level of case numbers. We have experienced that here. Overconfidence is another thing, a real information we need to know about. Every time things get better, people get overconfident. It's about to go away. It's, we've got this, etc. And then it pitches us back into the soup. So I'd say over dispersion, the fact that you can infect very, very many people and without being able to predict why. Overconfidence, to think that you can start saying we're going in the right direction, and getting numb to numbers. That's what we see, especially at the national level. Suddenly we're used to, 4,000 people a day dying in one of the bigger states of the country. And we don't want to get used to that.
How do positive cases impact our community? And what does that mean for public health agents, contact tracers, and medical professionals when there are positive cases and close contacts? Why should these numbers concern us?
Okay, so the numbers we're seeing recently should be very concerning because obviously we're seeing a big increase in the numbers, and as those numbers increase, they can overwhelm our medical practices, and it causes rollbacks of openings, business closings, school closures, schools going remote rather than in-person learning. It also overwhelms public health and their ability to trace contacts. And without being able to quickly trace the contacts, it tends to spread much quicker. I know a lot of people look at the cases and say, well, there's a lot of cases, but nobody's getting really sick. But just because you don't know anybody that got really sick doesn't mean that it won't happen to you or a loved one. And, you don't want to be that one that brings it home and somebody in your family does get very ill. And the more numbers we see, the more we have to worry about the hospital being overwhelmed. We have a small hospital. We have limited resources as an island. So if we can't contain the numbers, we don't know that we can provide the healthcare and the services that we need to provide for the people that do come down with the illness.
Based on our numbers, could the island community do a better job? And if so, what should we do to get back to some sense of normalcy?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to recognize that basically every single one of us is experiencing some sort of pandemic fatigue, and we're all just completely worn out by living our lives in this sort of unusual modified way for the last 11 months or so. So I think we just need to be kind to each other, recognize that everyone's worn out and really itching to get back to, sort of their old familiar lives. So, sort of recognizing that, I think we can begin to sort of track back toward normal if we just exercise the best practices that we've been hearing, basically spring, summer, fall, and now into the winter, with proper use of a mask. Maintain that 6 foot distance as best you can at all times. So when you're talking to a friend or a colleague, you can have a conversation with anyone, as long as you maintain that distance. And then there's the 6 foot threshold, which essentially is what you're trying to respect. And then there's the time factor, which is the 15 minutes. So 15 minutes inside of 6 feet increases the likelihood that you could pick up an exposure from someone who is contagious and doesn't realize it. It's really important to resist the temptation to expand your bubble, and it's a temptation. We have the Super Bowl coming up. We have holidays, events. People want to go skiing, and they flirt with the idea of just expanding that what's been established to be a safe group for something fun. And those are the folks that local health almost always ends up speaking with. We're very much more likely to speak with someone who flirted with the limits than someone who adhered to best practices. And then looking forward, when the weather warms and we can go back outdoors, and we've done a good job of keeping our numbers manageable all winter, we're hoping that things will improve. Sort of the natural rhythm of the virus, combined with the fact that we can get some outdoor socializing and things like that, I think will be a step toward normalcy. And we'd like to get back to last summer's numbers, which with all our experience and what we've learned, we should be able to. But we need to really be on a solid track for the next couple of months until we can get outdoors and sit around a fire pit again.
To add on to what Matt said a little bit about expanding your bubble, we've had a few clusters on the island identified with gatherings of larger groups of people, and it's important to remember that there is a cap on gathering limits at the state level right now, and I think it's important to be mindful of that. Well, it's tempting to have birthday parties, or like Matt said, Super Bowl parties or sleepovers and things of that nature, that you just really need to be mindful about congregating with any larger group of people, because there's a real potential for spread at events like that.
Yeah, I wanted to add too, when just hearing the word normalcy, that's going to be a gradual process. That's not an overnight. And I am concerned that people may be so excited about getting their first shot of vaccine that they think that's normalcy, and it's not. You're not protected immediately. You're not even protected immediately after the second shot, and we still don't know about transmission after being vaccinated. Normalcy, yes, and any relief from what we're doing now will be wonderful. But it's going to be a gradual, ideally we need to make it gradual, stepwise. We don't want to see a sudden explosion of cases because everybody's decided the pandemic is over. So normalcy in small baby steps, and pay attention to what happens as we do it. And if it looks like it's hitting us badly, we say, oops, that was a little too fast.
Right.
Go back.
I have a question. Do you all know how long it takes for people who've gotten the vaccine to be protected after the second dose, or do we know that yet? I know it's obviously still so new, so if not, don't worry.
It is. I have heard 2 weeks. But there may be variation between different vaccine types.
Right.
And now, of course, we're dealing with these possible different variants of the disease that are maybe less well controlled with the vaccine. So that's again part of the reason for gradual, and it has to be gradual. But being able to meet outdoors again, take dog walks together, with masks on, that kind of thing already sounds to me like great freedom and great difference from the way we're living now.
Right. Yeah. I guess in terms of the new variant, are any of you concerned about that? Do you have any concerns that it's here, that people have contracted it here? If not, then that's great. But yeah, I'm just wondering that because I think other people are.
I'll just say briefly, you can't find what you don't test for.
Right.
Mhm.
And, so we have to assume it has been found and present in Florida and New York. Now that's a lot of communication with the island from those two states. And anyway, as we were saying, people are traveling. We have to assume it will be here, and it's when, not if.
And there have been discussions ongoing with the hospital and the health departments about what the process is to begin testing for the variants. I don't know where that is or when and if that will happen, but that is an ongoing discussion.
Okay. Thank you. Matt.
So I read an article coincidentally just before we got on that talked about, the variants being reasonably, as far as they know, controlled by the vaccine, but it's a race to essentially get everyone vaccinated and get the necessary immunity before the variants get a toehold. So it's more transmissible, more contagious, but controlled, we believe, by the vaccine. So the idea, and is controlled, beyond Martha's Vineyard, the federal and the state governments. But if we can get the vaccine delivered in a timely enough manner, we can actually sort of outrace the variants, and we'll be in a much better position. But in the meantime, it goes back to the precautions and the smart choices around travel and things like that that are our best tool for now.
Yeah, I have a question, real quick. What do you mean by outrace? Like outrace the variant?
To get enough vaccine administered to the public, so that they have immunity, so that when they encounter the virus, they will have the immunity, so that the variants move more quickly is what they're beginning to, I think, feel confident writing about and saying. So it's really a matter of building immunity in the broad population before the variants start to spread quickly. It's kind of like a fire. You're trying to actually control the fire before it gets so big that suddenly it's well beyond control.
Right. Megan, did you have something to add? And Marina?
Sure. Just while we were on the topic about the variant and the variant being present in other states, I think now might be a good time to just have a brief explanation about the quarantine requirements and travel, especially as February break is coming up in a couple of weeks, and I know people are probably looking to go and do activities outside of Massachusetts. So the governor still has a quarantine order in place. So anybody who travels out of state, so just for instance, if you were here and you went to Vermont or New Hampshire or New York or wherever you go, you would either have to take a test 72 hours before return to Massachusetts, or quarantine for 10 days upon arrival back home. But when you get back home, if you take a test, so you could go out and take your test, when you get your negative result back, then you would be able to go back and do your normal activities. But it's a really important thing to note that we have seen, some instances of people becoming ill through travel. And it's important to really be mindful of that when people are going, about their vacation plans, that to make sure that they're quarantining and testing upon return.
Absolutely. Yeah. Marina?
I've just done that. In fact, the travel quarantine. I went to Vermont to visit my mom. She's 87. It's really worth it. But as I came back, I went to the high school, and we are very fortunate to have the high school testing site because no questions asked, sign up and get a test. And I tested negative after 3 days back. I had my result. So now I'm able to move around. Just one more thing about the variant. the more people have the disease, whether it's the COVID we're all used to or any of the new variants, the more people have it, the more there's a statistical chance, and more than a chance, inevitable with enough people having it, that there will be other variants because it evolves constantly. So if we are not able to control the spread and we have millions of people infected, more variants will emerge because that's what the virus does. So yes.
Right. Okay. Omar, could you are you ready to answer question 5? Is he there?
He's muted.
He looks like he's on a phone because
Yeah.
the
There he
mic.
is.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Let me ask. Okay. All right. What would you like our audience to take away from this interview?
I would like our audience to understand, the seriousness and the gravity, of this virus, and that, to keep in mind, we see individuals who become infected, and they go through their isolation period, and then they're back to normal again. And at times you don't see, people passing away. You don't see the fatalities. But I think that it's very important, for everyone to understand, that this virus affects the elderly and those with comorbidities more so than others. So even though we might see individuals around us, become infected and, overcome the virus, we need to always understand that there's a segment of the population who is greatly affected, by the virus. And that's one of the things that, I would like to come out of this interview today, just that understanding. And another thing is that, just understanding the important role, that the Board of Health, plays in all of this. And listening to the different health agents, you can see that we have a pretty important and difficult task, and looking at all the information, surrounding COVID and helping to make, decisions, in all the different sectors, here on the island. So we play a big role in that. And we're dealing again, with a virus that we don't know a ton of information about it, and it is one that is constantly changing. So it's important that, everyone understands the role that the Board of Health is playing. In addition to that, what I would like to, everyone to come out of within this interview is that, just the importance, and I can't overemphasize this, the importance of adhering to safety protocols, which, seems so simple, but, a lot of times they are not followed. You see it in the grocery stores. You don't see it in public as much, but, those protocols are quite simple. And it's the hand washing, social distancing, keeping people 6 feet away, and wearing of the mask. Can't overemphasize that. Those three things are so important. And if everyone understands, adheres to those points, it can make a big difference in helping to eradicate this disease. And the last thing that I'd like to add is that everyone in the community can play a huge role in helping to eradicate, this disease. If we only adhere to those safety protocols. And I will emphasize that over and over again. I think you hear it a lot on television when you're listening to Dr. Fauci and other experts. They repeatedly emphasize those 3 things: the hand washing, the social distancing, and wearing of the mask. And that's what the main points that I would like to make and for everyone to understand coming out of this interview. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess one last thing we could touch upon is just outlining the travel restrictions and the travel ban, just because February break is coming up, and people are inevitably going to travel, or at least that's what I've heard. So it'd be awesome if, that could be outlined again.
I can go over that. So, travel to any high risk state requires quarantine upon return. And the only non high risk state right now is Hawaii. So, if you're going to Hawaii, good luck. Have fun, stay warm. But you need to produce a test, like Marina had said, upon return, or you could do it 72 hours before return to the state. So essentially, if you go away, you would need to have a negative test within 72 hours before you get back to Massachusetts. Or when you get back to Massachusetts, you could quarantine, schedule a test, go take your test, and when you get your result negative, then you could remove yourself from quarantine. And the quarantine is, and you hear the words isolation and quarantine thrown about, and I think just making a little bit of a distinction that isolation is for people who have tested positive. Quarantine is for people who have not tested positive or maybe were identified as a close contact of somebody else. So essentially, if your family goes to Vermont to go skiing, the family could come home, make an appointment, go get tested, and when everybody tests negative, then you can go about your life, because there's always the potential for people to be infected and not know it, because there are a lot of people who are asymptomatic, especially younger people tend to be asymptomatic, but they can still transmit it to other people. So that's why the testing is really important after travel, to ensure that you're not infecting others in the community.
All right. Okay, I think that's it. So we can wrap it up. I think I just.
Avery, did
Matt.
you want to just remind folks that if they're researching local access to vaccine, that they can, I think probably the best one stop for information is the hospital website.
Right.
And if you go down to the middle of the page where it talks about information regarding vaccine, it's sort of a little bit of an uninviting little clickable box in the middle of their homepage. You click on that, then there's like a wealth of information on that second page.
Yeah.
And the key is going to be for the public going forward to fill out the paperwork and do the registration that's offered on that hospital website. It's called an attestation form. It's sort of like a fancy sign-up form. So it's like the COVID version of sign-up, attestation.
Yeah. All right. I guess that I just wanted to tell you all how much we appreciate you at the school and what you're doing. You guys are truly the unsung heroes of our school. So, yeah, just thank you for everything that you've done so far. I mean, we are not anymore. We're so grateful.